Welcome to the video channel for Guardian Angel Advisors. I'm your host, Carl Demeilig, and way back in the pilot episode, I had promised that I'd be interviewing a couple's financial coach. Well, today is the day. Adam Kok is the couple's financial coach. He helps couples go from financial overwhelm or avoidance to clarity, teamwork, and peace of mind. Adam also hosts the Couples Financial Coach podcast. Adam is a certified mediator with experience as a tax attorney and financial advisor. He received his law degree from Duke and a master's in tax law from NYU. Adam is also an experienced social justice advocate and lifelong musician. You can find his personal finance parodies on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you for having me, Carl. It's great to be partnering with you once again.
Yeah, I've known you for years, back from the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And now you're
Indeed,
the other end, I believe.
I am on the East Coast, about as far away from San Francisco as you can get down in South Florida.
Pretty much. Yeah, when you were first working on this concept, obviously you didn't find this in the wanted ads.
Correct.
That you had to create this all on your own with your expertise. Could you share how you got to where you are now from when you were not just an attorney, but an attorney and a financial advisor?
Yeah. So you're right, and there weren't any roadmaps, and this wasn't really something that I had initially set out to do, but just I was fortunate to find something that really complemented the experiences I've had as a financial advisor, as a tax lawyer, as a mediator, as a coach. Uh, Basically, I've been a finance geek my whole life, studied economics, worked as a financial advisor. Then I got married and then went to law school, got a master's in tax law. And while I was getting that master's, actually got divorced. Right. And so that was one key piece of this puzzle for me because I personally experienced how much divorce stinks, right? And I had seen as a financial advisor the difference the right kind of information and knowledge and support can make to families, peace of mind, and partnership. And then I worked as a tax lawyer and continued growing my knowledge on the financial side of things. And along the way, started coaching, doing conflict resolution work, realized I had a knack for both of them. So I actually went and got certified as a mediator. And along the way, realized, wow, there is a huge need at the intersection of relationships and money. This repeatedly ranks as one of the top causes of divorce is financial stress, right? And when I went to Google and Amazon, there were so few people, basically none, who specialized only in this, and very few books about it. Right. So I like to joke that I ordered all of them and started reading them, all the books, and basically sat down, was like, okay, what does it look like to take the skills of a mediator and a coach, of a financial advisor and tax lawyer, and help couples navigate this within their relationship? And I've been eating, sleeping, breathing this the last 3+ years, writing, reading, podcasting, creating videos, being guests on other people's channels like yours. And I'm proud to say I've built a wonderful business. I've helped many couples bring more love and aliveness. I've had couples go from the verge of divorce, even all the way back to best friends, paying off mountains of debt, getting raises in their jobs, restarting businesses, fulfilling on dreams, and ultimately strengthening not just their finances, but also their families and their relationships.
Yeah, it's great to hear that you live and breathe this. You can be awoken at 3 a.m. and be the expert at 3:01, because this is what you live and do. And it makes sense that
Thanks.
no one's writing there isn't a major in college for this because up until maybe the last 100 years, it was pretty much a one-income household.
Right.
And then it wasn't until maybe World War II where it was a two-income household, but the dynamics were still, okay, one person's in charge, but it just was always a missing thing about how do couples talk about money because usually one person handled everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nature of, at least in Western society, it was a male led household, right? So most of the decisions, not in addition to most of the money being earned, was coming from the side of the man, and at least in a heterosexual partnership, right? Um, and now, more recently, not only do we have all kinds of mixes of people in relationships and marriages, but also a thirst for a more equal partnership, right? And that's actually my original podcast name was the Equal Partners Podcast, but people weren't sure what that meant all the time, so I changed it to the Couples Financial Coach Podcast to be really clear. But I still love that concept because that's who most of my clients are. They're like, we want things to be equal. They're not going to be perfectly equal because someone always makes more money, someone makes less money. Someone comes from a family who has fewer resources, and someone comes from a family with more resources, right? You have different points of view on what most matters or what things you like to buy or save for. But how can you navigate that in a way that not only minimizes the conflict, but actually helps you get aligned, feel closer to each other, and helps you enjoy life now and achieve those longer term goals. And that's really what my work's all about.
So you earlier you talked about what happens when they don't consult with you, and you also mentioned what happens when they do consult with you. You've reversed potentially the chances for divorce. What this might be a it'll just be interesting to hear. What's the worst you've seen when they didn't go with your advice or anyone like you, and then what's the worst that you've been able to help reverse?
Well, I mean, when couples don't go with me, I don't necessarily see what happens down the line. So, the best I could do is guess. But depending on which study you read, around one third of people name finances as the top cause of their divorce. And in a country where the divorce rate is somewhere around 45 plus percent, that means a lot of couples are having these issues and getting divorced because of them, right? So I imagine that is in the likely outcomes for some of these couples. Um, but for me, I always think about this one couple who, during the consultation, I said, "How are things going to go if nothing changes?" And they were having a lot of tension around money. And for the first time ever, the wife says to her husband, sitting right next to him with me there, if things don't get better when the kids are a little older, I'm probably going to walk out. And that was a bomb to drop in the middle of this conversation. But we go there, right? Even in our consultations. So be prepared, right? If you're having these challenges, let's talk, but also know we're going to go deep even during your consultation. Uh, and honestly, the transformation happened right away because they didn't make more money or pay off all their debt right away, but they realized that they were both committed to working on this into the relationship. And when they decided to work with me, that was a symbol of that commitment. And I believe that's what very quickly lifted a lot of this weight on their shoulders. Because here's the thing, the problem is not just that we have differences of opinion about how to spend our money, it's that we don't know how to talk about it or we're scared to talk about it. So we don't talk about it. So the disconnect grows, which eventually erodes our intimacy and can lead to resentment or anger or even bitterness. And that's the kind of thing that really drives a relationship apart. So once they made that mutual commitment, time, energy, and money to working with me, all of a sudden, a huge piece of that weight was lifted off of their shoulders. I think they could sense, oh, we're going to be teammates again. Right. And I'll never forget that same wife said to me on one of our calls a few months later, Adam, I was talking to one of my girlfriends and I refer to my husband as my best friend. It just naturally came out of my mouth. I haven't said that in years. Right. And so while this couple paid off a, over 25,000 in debt and the wife restarted her business and they had tremendous success being the spokespeople for Financial Peace University program for families in their church. And they got like 6 times the signups they were hoping for. I mean, we could rattle off the accomplishments for them during the time we worked together. But for me, it was that piece. They went from on the verge of divorce because of tension, fighting, anxiety, anger related to money to being best friends again, to rowing in the same direction, as the husband said. And at the end of the day, a lot of finances, it boils down to math. And even if you don't like math, there are tools online that can help you do the math, right? Or you can pay someone to help you do the math. But the piece that you have to do, that has to come from you and your significant other, is this communication piece, is this getting on the same page piece, is this emotional relational piece, is sharing with each other, opening up, and then also listening to each other, right? And when you get that in place, it makes all the difference. And it doesn't take terribly long because, like I said, just committing to work on this, showing your commitment, really signals to your partner, look, I'm not trying to run. I'm here with you. I am in this. And when their partner says, okay, let's do it, that signals to them, I'm in this too. Right. So now we have that mutual faith and trust is being built or rebuilt. Right. And that makes so much possible.
I think what's great about that is, let's say that couple you were talking about, they're in that church. What I think is great about everything you just said is that now this couple, they have that program through their church. A lot of them are probably going to have kids. And when their kids see how their parents handle money and issues over money, they sort of get passively taught. And I'm sure when they start getting their own job, their own allowance, maybe they start their own business, it's going to be easier to talk to their own parents because their parents know how money works as a couple.
Absolutely. I think a lot about the ripple effects of anything in life. And I mean, for example, the couples who I'm working with now not only will pass on a healthier relationship with money to their children, but also as they age and maybe they have to have some conversations with their kids about what's going to happen when we retire. What if somebody needs nursing care, for example, right? What's going to happen with our estate? Those parents are now going to be that much better equipped to have these conversations, and not just from a place of financial knowledge, but from, oh right, I can talk about this and I don't have to be overwhelmed by shame or embarrassment or fear or worried about offending somebody. We can just have a conversation about it, right? It's not necessarily going to always be easy, but money, just like many other important topics in the realm of families and marriage, is one that needs to be talked about. And so we do it because we know that's going to make our lives better overall.
I know for me, I'm an analytical type. So when I got involved in the life insurance agency, to me, it was just a straightforward question. If you were to die, how much would you need to, cover the rest so there's no more debt in the house? And that's just my personality, just being matter of factual, money, numbers. This will clear the problem, but there's still the emotional problem that
Yep.
not my strength. And I know that. And this, especially since you're also a mediator, you know how to navigate between all of those important topics. Because I would imagine if you don't get this out in the air, there's going to be a lot of passive aggressive conversations in the house, like, "Oh, you bought that," or it'll just be petty argument after petty argument, never getting to the actual point.
Correct. Or avoiding the topic and letting your insides are like swirling or on fire, and it only just grows over time.
Do you plan on writing a book on this?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's in the works.
Oh, great, good to hear. Um, yeah, because it's not in schools. I have a theory about why it's not taught in schools. Doesn't really matter on this podcast right now. Let's see. So, where do you see your business, your scope? Do you see it expanding at all or getting finer tuned?
Yeah. I'm an idea person. I have a million ideas all the time, and I tend to need people around me who can listen and help me sift through those ideas to see which ones are like way out there and which ones make sense. But definitely, a book is in the works, at least one to start. The plan there is to write a book that takes my framework for couples getting from this place of overwhelm or avoidance or fighting to that place of clarity, teamwork, and peace of mind as a unit, right? Improving their finances and their relationship. Perhaps other books in the future. I love my focus with couples. I work exclusively with couples. I plan for that to continue. I have private coaching and an online program, and then perhaps in the future, I may create specific pieces that are for like people buying their first home or people who are planning their wedding. And actually, just before the call, we were talking about, can't quote me on this because it hasn't been fully put in, but as Carl said, I was a former tax lawyer, and I'm thinking about taking my license from the inactive status back to active to start offering prenuptial and postnuptial agreements to people as well. I'm a big advocate for those, which there's a lot of stigma. We tend to think they're for rich people, or it's like, for Anna Nicole Smith dating that, like, getting married to that guy who was in his 80s or 90s or whatever when she was like in her 20s. Uh, but it's really not that. I see it as a powerful insurance policy for your relationship that allows both of you to invest fully in the overall growth and quality of your family and your partnership. And you can do that only if you have confidence and trust that even if things go south in the relationship, you'll still be taken care of later. Right. And if you put together one of these agreements while things are good, it has the potential to give you that kind of assurance so that you can just rest easy. You don't have to stress about what happens if this relationship doesn't work out. You can just leave that at the door and give 120%. And frankly, to have a great family and marriage, it kind of does take 120%. So I want to help people facilitate that as much as possible.
And on TV, they mostly show the contractual agreement at the wedding when it's spoken. Maybe they wrote their vows, but now when you have these agreements in writing and you call them on it, you're like, no, I'm not. You can come from the standpoint of we agreed to this a long time ago, remember? And you did agree back then. Can we get back on page? It's not going to be an argument, a lot of anger. It's just remember this, okay? Just wanted to remind you.
Yeah, and that legal protection, it can make a difference. Listen, even though I'm a lawyer, I'm not a person who's like put every single thing in writing, right? There's challenges too, right? Like if you go to a legal process, um, the other person may feel, wait, do you not trust me, like, to just keep my word or whatever? So it's a bigger conversation, right? It's also about destigmatizing these things and saying, look, this is, or at least it can be and maybe should be, commonplace. This is just us while things are good and while we're at a peak of our love for each other and concern for each other, making a plan so that if anything happens, it's as seamless and as fair and as reasonable as possible, because divorce is no fun. And when I got divorced, my ex-wife and I, we were just grad students. We didn't have any assets. We had negative assets. But it was still the toughest time of my life, right? And only so much more complicated if there are children or uh, big, like, significant assets in the estate. So sometimes an ounce of prevention can be worth a pound of cure. And I think, like I said, it can allow, if done right, it can allow people to just breathe more easily and set themselves up for success now, and also when they look to their legacy planning, which I know is something that you care a lot about as well.
Can you tell us about this quiz you have on your website?
Yeah, the idea is it's super brief quiz, few questions to answer, and based on that, I'm going to tell you your couple's money personality type, meaning where are you and your partner as a duo? Are you rock stars in your communication and your money? Awesome, keep doing what you're doing. Are you like partial partners, like kind of on, like, not completely a mess, but also not really where you could be, right? Or all the way down to, are you in emergency territory, right? Are you in this, like, we're not talking about money very often. When we do talk about money, it goes haywire. I have no idea what's going on with my partner's finances. We're not on the same page, right? These are the kinds of questions. And the idea is not just to have uh, fun, cute moniker like a BuzzFeed article might give you, but also I identify what I've seen in my clients. What are the ways we tend to be feeling in each of those situations? And what are the next steps I recommend taking to help you move up the ladder, right, in the positive direction? And typically, I give you some sort of free tool you can access right then and there that you can go through or work through to help you strengthen your partnership around money.
Do you take this quiz as a couple or you with as one person of the couple?
You could do it either way. It's interesting sometimes to have each person take it and then see where they had the same or different answers or got same or different
Yeah.
results. And let me tell you, it happens. Sometimes people are like, "Oh yeah, I feel like we talk about money like a few times a month," and the other person's like, "I don't think should we get like the pint or quart of lo mein is talking about money. Like, yeah, it's 5.95 or 7.95, but not talking, right? Like they have different definitions of things. So you can do it either way. You can take it as many times as you want, get all the tools, put in a bunch of good answers, a bunch of terrible answers. It's all good. It's there at your service, right?
Excellent. One person thinks they're a rock star, the other one's like,
But you know what? But that's instructive unto itself. Wow. Okay. Well, what's the source of this gap? What is it that has you think we're rocking? Maybe there's some stuff I'm forgetting about and not acknowledging. Or what has you think that we're in emergency territory? Oh my God. Wow. I didn't realize that was affecting you so profoundly. Like, let's talk about that. Right. Yeah. And it's just hopefully an easy to remember URL. So my website is couplesfinancialcoach.com. So it's couplesfinancialcoach.com/quiz.
great. And and it's a nice way of bridging the gap of talking about money. You just say, hey, let's take this for fun versus actually opening up and, digging deep, like you said, what happens in your sessions.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for this, and I do it with my all my clients. I start off with a bit more approachable of a conversation because money is such a difficult, uncomfortable, loaded topic. It's a huge taboo in our society. We have all kinds of narratives around money inside of us. Then we try and mix with a significant other, with a spouse. It can become exponentially more complicated. And so I am a huge advocate for, let's just get the conversation started and be talking about money, but doing it in as harmless a way as possible. Right. Even just sharing about, what did I see growing up with mom and dad? Uh, what did I like that they did? What did I not like that they did? And how have their choices, how have I taken those in now? How do I think they've affected the choices and values I have now? Uh, because that's not a conversation where there's really much to argue about. You're really just sharing. But even just for the sake of our brain and our nervous system, being able to have a couple of conversations about money where you're not feeling really anxious or arguing or going after and criticizing each other, that can make a huge difference right off the bat.
It sounds like a nice follow-up book to the Rich Dad Poor Dad series because he learned from two different, parents, so to speak, different mindsets of money, and you never know how the child or the student is going to behave around it, what they saw, what they, like you said, what did they like, what did they not like.
Hmm.
And I think this will really keep families together.
Yeah.
They're not going to break up over money, and then stronger families have stronger communities. It should really begin there. Government isn't going to fix your community.
Yeah. Yeah. Only the community knows best how to do that.
And you did mention, we spoke about this. There's a community you support on a regular basis. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So I support the New Orleans Family Justice Center. I donate 2% of my revenues each month to the New Orleans Family Justice Center. Uh, Credit to Jackie Lamb, who's a wonderful personal finance writer. She really inspired me with this. She offered to donate a fee that I was paying her one time for work she did for me. And we decided to choose this organization for a couple of reasons. Number one, as a couples financial coach, my clients are people who love each other, right? And couples who want to make it work. And of course, I charge for my services. So they're typically people who have some amount of income to be able to afford the services, right? Or they can find a way to make it work. But there are cases that are beyond my scope, right? And in particular, when we're talking about financial abuse, this is a really toxic dynamic between partners, but it's something that I'm not best situated or equipped to help with,
Could you
right?
define
And
that? What
so
is financial abuse?
so financial abuse is essentially using money as a tool of control, right? And taking advantage of the other person. It's incredible because financial abuse co-occurs with domestic abuse 99% of the time, which blew my mind when I heard it. I actually just the last post as of recording, the time we're recording this, Carl, the last episode of my podcast was about this. I have a colleague who's a financial coach specifically for women who are survivors of domestic abuse. She was one herself, and she teaches them now how to get back on their feet financially and restore their confidence. And I've had her on the podcast, and this time I had her and her boyfriend talking about, how do you navigate that with somebody, right? Because a lot of people have experienced that, and then they have a new partner who they love, but that partner says, okay, let's make a joint account. And all of a sudden they're having a literal panic attack because they have this trauma from the past and they've been taken advantage of, right? So how do we navigate that? And that's something that for people who have gone on in their healing and have a strong relationship, that's a client I can work with. But for people who are trying to get out of or have just gotten out of a domestic abuse and financial abuse situation, that's something that I feel is beyond my scope. So I wanted to support this organization because they do help people who are dealing with that or who have dealt with that, right? It's like kind of part of my universe, but a piece that I'm not the expert in. And so it felt really resonant to be able to support that organization. And New Orleans is an area that has a lot of poverty for a number of reasons. And so that's why, with Jackie's help, we identified that particular organization.
Wow, it's a fantastic cause. I had no idea what the correlation with or what the term financial abuse. You see it, but I just didn't know how to name to it.
Right. And, when you hear about domestic violence, domestic abuse, if you've dug into it, a common thing are it's hard to leave because you don't have the money to leave. Right. And so it becomes one of the most important levers of control is, hey, right, like, say the abusive partner keeps the other one from getting a job or getting their education so they can get a better job. Right. And they don't let them have access to the bank accounts or the credit cards, and good luck taking yourself, let alone if you have children, and going. You got to put down first month's rent, security deposit, and last month's rent, plus fill up the fridge with groceries. Like, this is very difficult when you have no money, right? So unless you're lucky enough to have a family or close friends who can help you out, that's why a lot of people end up in shelters after they leave a situation like that. And the New Orleans Family Justice Center does both advocacy work, but also is a shelter. So that's why I think it's an important organization in general, but it felt really appropriate to support through my work.
Wow, yeah, that's now that my eyes are aware. Actually, what are some signs from a distance if I have friends that might be part of one of those? If it's something
Well,
you feel like you could speak on.
yeah, I mean, not to be self-promoting, I'd refer people to the episodes of the Couples Financial Coach podcast that Alta Felix is on. She's the financial coach I mentioned. But if you Google financial abuse, there's some great resources out there. And as I recall, again, not an expert on this, but things like not letting a person get a job, or restricting how much they're able to work against their wishes, that's something that can be a sign if they refuse to allow the significant other to be on a bank account or an asset, right? Maybe I'm not going to put you on the mortgage or the deed to the house. I'm not going to put you on this car, right? On the loan or the agreement to buy it. The lease or the loan. Uh, those are the kinds of things where it can seem a little off. Like, if this is an obvious spot where we would be clearly partners and both be on this document or both have access to this, right? Or even if one partner is off spending a bunch of money, right? Especially if they're the primary earner, but then they don't give any money, right? Or they're like giving their significant other an allowance. That's not always financial abuse. Some people have arrangements that work for them, but sometimes that's the kind of thing we see. Okay, here's $100 a month, and by the way, with that, you need to feed yourself and all four kids. What? Right? And by the way, you're not allowed to get a job.
Hmm.
Huh? So, anything in that realm, with the caveat, like I said, Google will be your best friend around this because I'm not the expert.
Now, what about those who are seeking long-term relationships, marriages? Would your course be a great thing to take before getting into a relationship and then having the other partner take it with you later, or should you wait until there's conflict?
Well, there's a third option, right? I would say once you're in a committed relationship and you're at the point where you are starting to look towards your future plans involve this other person, that's a great space to take the program. And it is helpful if you're already in conflict, but it is also extremely helpful as preventive medicine, right? Not just for the sake of the relationship, but also getting your finances in order. I know that I like to talk a lot about the communication and emotional and relational side of things. I geek out over that, but the course has plenty of numbers, right? I've got a spreadsheet for you for those who enjoy the spreadsheets, right? I've got activities for you to do and research and things to calculate and figure out so that we can actually make a concrete financial plan by the end of the program. That you know what are your top goals and you know how you're going to go after them, right? And you also know what you're going to do to help keep the relationship healthy as you go for these goals. So I would say for single people, there's some other really wonderful courses to check out. But the best thing you could do if you're a single person wanting to prepare for this is learn to navigate your own relationship with money. Do some introspection, right? Even around what we might call like money mindset or your money scripts or your money story. There's plenty of resources online from other financial coaches or financial therapists about that to just get to know yourself better. And because this is the work I end up doing with my clients in our first few sessions is what's your relationship with money? Like I said before, how did you see it growing up? How did that affect you? And this does a few things for you. Number one, if you see a narrative that doesn't work for you, you can start to work on changing it. Okay. If you know there's something that is difficult for you, you can manage your triggers when you're talking to your partner so that you don't launch into fight or flight mode and start attacking them or shutting down or getting defensive, right? And it also gives you something to share with your partner that is kind of vulnerable and that is going to build a sense of trust and safety and connection between the two of you, which is really the foundation of having a healthy financial relationship. So I'm a big fan of that, and you can start that work no matter where you are in terms of life or relationship.
So it sounds like the sooner the better. If that way, at least the
Absolutely, why
story's
not?
out. Your narrative
Well,
is
listen,
clear.
it's not just because I care about this, but what is it, 70 something percent of people slash families live paycheck to paycheck and couldn't afford a $500 medical expense, right? About a third of couples say financial stress was the main cause of their divorce in a country where 45 plus percent of marriages end in divorce. This is not like some tangential thing that Adam just happens to think is really cool, right? This is one of the biggest issues affecting people, marriages, families day to day, hour to hour sometimes, right? So to get a head start on it can pay dividends now and later.
Well, this was a fantastic conversation, Adam. Is there any parting advice you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, well, hopefully this has come through in the conversation. First of all, Carl, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Second, I hope this has come through in the conversation, but a lot of people think that if they talk about money stuff with their significant other, it's going to make things worse, or that they or their partner can't change, or it's going to take too much time and energy. The reality is, not talking about this is the kind of thing that your anxiety and your stress will build up over time and it'll hurt your relationship in the long run and hurt your finances, right? So I really recommend letting go of those narratives that it's going to be worse if you talk about it, because if you have the right support and conversations, it can be extremely helpful and beneficial for you and for your relationship. Um, if you don't know where to start with that, that's a great opportunity to go check out my quiz or my website and get some of those resources or check out the Couples Financial Coach podcast. So that's where you find me, couplesfinancialcoach.com or the Couples Financial Coach podcast. And again, for the quiz is couplesfinancialcoach.com/quiz. And I'm happy to connect with you through the website of the podcast. Let me know if you have any questions. I've got a ton of free resources I'm happy to send your way. And if you want that more in depth support, reach out. You can schedule a complimentary financial harmony consultation. I have one of those bit.ly links. So it's bit.ly/financial harmony consultation, all lowercase.
Great, and we'll have all of those links in the show notes as soon as I learn how to do that. And but it will be there. It will be in the show notes for anyone to easily click at the anyway. Again, this was a fantastic conversation, Adam. I think this is going to help families, their kids, and the future, as well as the communities they live
Thank
in.
you.
Hope to have you back
I hope
soon with
so.
some, if you wanted to come back and share some other amazing stories. And hopefully by then you'll be announcing the launch of your new book.
Thank you, Carl. I really appreciate the time.
All righty.